I'm John Miller. I'm a musician, artist, and writer. Probably not in that order. I would say artist, writer, and musician. I met Mike when I was a graduate student. We both attended CalArts, and I remember it pretty vividly, actually, because there was a kind of main office for the art school where people sometimes hung out. And I remember he was sitting sort of backwards on a couch, sort of kneeling with his knees on the cushion and sort of joking around, very much enjoying himself. I think for him, grad school was a very good experience. And he was very friendly and outgoing, and we got to know each other quickly. I'm just completing my manuscript on educational complex. Mike began to engage in a form of institutional critique. And for him, I think this presented a kind of conflict because most kinds of work with that tendency he regarded as self-righteous. I think he was trying to cope with the terms of his own success. And I think that that's something that he had to deal with from that point onward in his career. It was a bit of a challenge for him because part of that success meant that his working class background was being transformed. So those are some of the complex scenarios that spin around this work. But I think what prompted it was he started thinking about the terms of his success and the terms of his legitimation. And that begins really with his education. What you see when you view educational complex is a large platform that I think is 8 feet wide and 16 feet long. It's supported by a series of wood sawhorses. Then on top of that is a white piece of gator board, and then placed on that are, in a kind of grid formation, are the different architectural models. It includes buildings from the University of Michigan, the California Institute of the Arts, then his kindergarten, the Catholic school he attended, the high school, and his residence that he would later reproduce in his last work, Mobile Homestead. One aspect of CalArts that intrigued Mike was the sublevel, and that housed much of the school's film program. Mike said that later what intrigued him was that anything that's underground is an image of the repressed. So that's part of what he was drawn to. So for that reason, Educational Complex also features a cutout in the bottom where you can view the sublevel of CalArts by laying on your back on a small mattress. After the Whitney Museum acquired it, they asked that he put a vitrine over it. And so it was first shown without anything protecting it. It's also an interesting addition to the work because it seals it off. So in a way, the vitrine becomes a sort of metaphor of reification, but it also points towards the whole Candor series of works that Mike would do later on. In his rhetoric surrounding the work, what he claimed was that the work had to do with repressed memory syndrome. It's a controversial idea, and it pertains to sexual abuse. For people who were sexually abused, they repress all memory of it, and it constitutes a hole in their memory. Mike attempted to recreate the floor plans of all the schools he attended from memory. He said that the parts he couldn't remember were sites of sexual abuse. And the parts he couldn't remember, instead of being articulated by a system of walls, were just rendered as blocks in the model. When Mike Kelley first showed Educational Complex, he showed it with other works at a show at Metro Pictures, and the title of the show was Towards a Utopian Arts Complex. The first written utopian scheme and the first treatise on education was Plato's Republic. In the Republic, Plato postulated that in some ways education produces social elites. So that's one element that I think Mike was wrestling with. In a late text that he wrote, actually for me, for a book of my criticism, he took a phrase from a short text I wrote that was kind of like a manifesto or a series of aphorisms. And that phrase was, "Utopia is a space outside the market." And he examined the facetiousness of that phrase, or that there was a certain irony to it. But at the very end, he also said that he couldn't imagine a form of art that was devoid of a utopian dimension or a utopian aspiration. So I think that kind of neatly synopsizes the play of forces, and in some ways, you could even say the irresolvable contradiction he was trying to address in that work.